What is up, guys? Welcome back to another UFC prediction video. And this week, we got UFC Mexico City, Moreno versus Royval 2. I think it's going to be an excellent card. Got some really good fights on here. And we're going to get into the predictions here in just a second after we recap last week, UFC 298. Did absolutely fantastic with my predictions last week. I only got one fight wrong that I actually predicted, which was Roman Kopylov versus Hernandez. Unfortunately, Roman Kopylov did get submitted, but other than that, I got every single prediction that I made correct. So we're going to try and keep that streak going this week with our predictions here today. I'm going to start with the early prelims, go on to the main card. So stick with me and we're going to get right into it now. All right, getting started on the prelims, the first fight of the card, we got Eric Silva versus Muhammad Naimov. Pretty easy pick here, in my opinion. Unless a fluke happens, Naimov should get it done. I'm going to take him by a TKO in round 3. I think it'll take him a round or 2 to break Eric Silva before he finally gets it done and gets him out of there. But Eric Silva, I don't think he's really UFC caliber. Naimov beat Jamie Malarkey, beat Nathaniel Wood, even though in the Nathaniel Wood fight, he was cheating a lot. If you're not cheating, you're not trying, as the old saying goes. I think that just shows that he has a willingness to win, similarly to Leon Edwards in the Kamaru Usman fights, grabbing the fence, things along these lines. But Eric Silva lost to TJ Brown a year ago, hasn't been active. Naimov's been active, has some pretty good pop in his hands. So I think this is a pretty clear victory for Muhammad Naimov. Give me Muhammad Naimov, round 3 KO. Next fight on the card, we got Victor Altamirano versus Felipe Dos Santos. I'm taking Felipe Dos Santos here. He showed that he was at a high level when he fought Manel Kape on short notice. He was going tit for tat with him and giving him some problems. I think Felipe Dos Santos is going to rise up the flyweight division and give us a little bit more of a dynamic up at the top of that division instead of having to rerun these rematches and trilogies that we seem to be running into consistently in the flyweight division. Give me Felipe Dos Santos by a dominant decision. Victor Altamirano is just one of those run-of-the-mill kind of NPC guys who can't really impose their will. Give me Felipe Dos Santos by a dominant decision. And I want to see him get a step up in competition, maybe get a top 15 opponent, because he already fought Manel Kape. So with one unranked win, I think that would do it for him. Next fight on the prelims, we got Bondar versus Rodriguez. Rodriguez making his UFC debut here, and Bondar coming off of probably the worst late stoppage I have ever seen in my entire life. This fight goes one of two ways in my opinion. I think Rodriguez either comes out feeling the hometown crowd, gets hyped up and goes for a quick early finish. And if Bondar's chin is fucked from getting elbowed 30 times after he was unconscious, I think he could go out again. Or I think Bondar will be able to stink it up, just kind of outland him, maybe push him up against the fence. I'm going to have faith in Bondar's chin. He's taken a good amount of time off since the last time he was KO'd brutally. It's been 8 months. So it's a lot better than, 4-month turnaround like Volk's doing between the Islam KO and the Ilya KO. So I think his chin will be rejuvenated. Give me Bondar by decision here. All right, moving on. Next fight on the prelims, we got Fares Ziam versus Claudio Puelles. I'm going to take Ziam by decision. I think something that people need to take into consideration on this card is the fact that it's like 7,000 feet above sea level. So these fighters are going to get tired quickly. I think that's even 2,000 or 3,000 feet above where Salt Lake City is. And you know how badly the fighters gas out there. So I think Puelles, if he doesn't get some type of lucky scramble, explosive submission on Ziam in the first round, he is going to wilt. And he has that BJJ striking that I think Ziam will be able to take advantage of. Ziam has like no pop in his hands, but he has decent technique and volume. So I think as long as he avoids that round 1 sub, he'll be able to coast to a pretty easy decision where he's just kicking the legs, kicking the arms of Puelles, jabbing him, getting him some straight shots down the middle. Ziam is a pretty decent striker, and any fighter with a brain knows that when you have a very specific weakness like he did versus Terrence McKinney, which is the reason I think a lot of people are going with Puelles here. That submission loss that ZM did take, I think that he's going to have a brain and improve his takedown defense, submission defense. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Gimme for Ross ZM here by decision. All right, moving on to the next fight. We got Edgar Chairez versus Da Silva. This fight already took place at UFC Noche. Edgar Chairez was destroying him on the feet and had him in a really deep guillotine. Basically put Da Silva out, and then as soon as he let go of the choke, once the ref pulled him apart, he got right back up. And he was a little dazed, but he kept it together just enough to where they called it a no contest and an early stoppage. I'm sure Edgar Chairez was pissed as fuck about that, and he wants to get his get back. He is a much better fighter than Da Silva. Da Silva has not won in the UFC, so this is a pretty clear and straightforward pick in my opinion. Give me Chairez by a round 2 KO after Da Silva gasses. I think Chairez is going to want to get his get back for last time, get himself a big win. But yeah, give me Edgar Chairez round 2 KO. Next fight, we got Aguilar versus Mendoza? I think that's how you pronounce it, Mendoza. Yeah, sorry. Bad pronunciation on my part. But Mendoza has a foot of reach and is coming down from bantamweight. I think he's just basically going to out-physicality Aguilar. He's going to be much bigger, and I think he's going to have better striking in this matchup. This is kind of a harder pick, but give me Mendoza by round 1 KO just because I cannot not choose that foot of reach advantage in this one right here. Last fight on the prelims, we got Quinones versus Ronnie Barcelos. So this is an interesting one as well. It reminds me of the Bondar versus Rodriguez matchup, but I originally was gonna pick Barcelos, but I just can't get over the skid that he's been on. I think Quinones is gonna be hungry. This is not a confident pick, but give me Quinones by round 2 KO. I think he's gonna have some initiative coming into this fight in his hometown, and Barcelos is also getting up there in age, and he's kind of been on a bad losing skid recently. It's only been 2 fights, so not like Tony Ferguson, BJ Penn-esque, but he's not getting any momentum, and I do believe he's about 36 years of age in this bout right here. So especially at bantamweight, he's probably going to be at a speed disadvantage, and Quinones might still be getting better. So not a confident pick here, but give me Quinones second round KO. Moving on, it's time for the main card. We got Manuel Torres versus Chris Duncan. I'm going to take Torres here by a second round KO. He's much more dangerous, has finishing ability, and in this game, speed kills. I think Chris Duncan is just going to be too slow to really be able to offer up any type of danger to Torres. He also has questionable defense, and I think Torres, he's going to have that motivation from the Mexican crowd, and I think he's going to get himself a big TKO on this card. A lot of the times I will pick the hometown fighter just because it seems that they have a little bit more initiative to get that big win, unless of course you're a Canadian on UFC 297. But here, I just like the guys that are more dangerous in these types of matchups, and Torres is much more dangerous than Chris Duncan. Unless Chris Duncan can manage to just stink it up the entire fight, I think Torres will find an opening and be able to get a TKO. Women's fight, Jiguri versus Hughes. Easy enough, Jiguri's gonna win. Not even gonna waste too much time on that. Raul Rosas Jr. versus Ricky Turcios. One of the feature fights of the night. And I think we can all see what the UFC is trying to do here. They're trying to get Rosas Jr. a good win. And I think he's going to get that. Ricky Turcios been inactive. And I think, like I mentioned in the Ziam and Puelles fight, I think there's going to be a lot of guys on this card who gas out. And Turcios, he has this tendency to, when he's not winning, he kind of throws panic volume to try and get ahead. And when you do that, you really run the risk of gassing out. Now, Rosas Jr. in his first fight, his UFC debut, he did gas out, which led to him losing. So this could be a bit risky, but I think he's just going to be improved a lot since then. He has momentum now. And even though he's a young buck, I think he's going to be able to beat these unranked guys that aren't really at a high level. Give me Raul Rosas Jr. to win by a round 2 submission and keep his momentum going. He's going to be a pretty good prospect, going to be in the UFC for a long time, and I think he's going to get himself a big win here. Next fight on the main card, we got Mexico versus Argentina. We got Daniel Ziliber versus Francisco Prado. I think this is going to be one of the more exciting matchups on the card. Both of these guys are pretty fun to watch. Ziliber, long, wiry striker, likes to keep people on the end of his punches using his reach advantage. And Francisco Prado is just a marauder. He's a pretty entertaining guy, likes to throw a lot of elbows, gets creative in there as well. I think that Prado is going to win this fight. I haven't taken many underdogs on this card. I believe I only picked one, which was Quinones over Ronnie Barcelos. So this is going to be my only other underdog of the card, which kind of gives away my next 2 predictions, but fuck it. Only other underdog on the card, I think that Francisco Prado is going to get it done. He is going to be at a slight size disadvantage, but Daniel Ziliber, people have range. Not everyone knows how to use it. He doesn't know how to use it. His lead hand game isn't very good. It's all over the place, and he gets caught consistently over the top of that lead hand. Doesn't really use the jab to his fullest extent. Keeps his head on the center line. He's there to be hit all day. Doesn't really have a lot of movement. And when he throws his shots, he has like no conviction in his strikes. He's throwing like snapping front kicks from WMMA range. Like he's halfway across the octagon throwing a kick that will never land. He kind of reminds me of a WMMA fighter in the way that he strikes, because he just has no conviction or intensity to it. And like I said, over that left hand, he's going to get caught with a big overhand right. It happened a lot in his last fight, and I think Prado is going to be able to do it here as well, because Ziliber, he's just not somebody you really have to fear hurting you. Prado, iron chin, 21 years of age. I think he's going to be able to walk him down, fire some leg kicks at him, and Ziliber is going to be backing out of the way of him, trying to reclose that distance. And I think when he's trying to reclose that distance to be able to land, not using his range effectively, I think Prado is going to be able to catch him. Maybe a big overhand right, maybe slips the jab and lands a nice up elbow on the inside. Something along these lines. And like I said, Ziliber's head is just always on the center line. He's there to be hit all day. And if Prado can just close that distance, I think if he lands a good shot on Ziliber, he will win. And Ziliber is not going to be able to keep him back because, like I said, he has that WMMA striking where he's not even trying to hurt you and he's just throwing things to give you a look. I think Prado is going to be able to walk right through that. He's pretty creative. I think he'll be able to find a good shot on the chin of Ziliber, whose chin is held up so far, but it can be a little bit suspect. Prado also shoots takedowns a good amount. Doesn't always get them, but at least he's giving you that look. Something I could see happening in this fight as well is him shooting a couple takedowns. Maybe they do get stuffed, but then he fakes one. Ziliber's hand goes down, and that big overhand right is going to be there. Give me Prado by round 1 KO. All right, we move on to the co-main event of the evening. Yair Rodriguez versus Brian Ortega. So, of course, this is a rebooking because they had already fought once and Brian Ortega's shoulder popped out of place. But it was because Yair Rodriguez was attempting a submission and Brian Ortega's body just kind of failed him. And on the feet, Yair Rodriguez was just being a menace to Brian Ortega. I mean, Yair Rodriguez is just ridiculously fast. His kicks are on point. And I think that instead of getting a submission win this time, I think he's going to knock Brian Ortega out. It's been since that fight in July 2022 since Ortega has fought. He's definitely going to have ring rust. As I said, I think that the elevation is going to severely hinder his cardio, especially since he hasn't been in the octagon for a long time, having to get a ton of surgeries. I just don't think he's going to be in the best condition ever. And I think Yair Rodriguez is very live for a KO in this fight. I think he's going to start putting the pressure on early. Maybe Ortega's able to push him up against the fence, maybe get a takedown. But I think it's only a matter of time before Ortega starts doing that zombie walk forward and Yair Rodriguez is just sniping him. It's like taking a pop quiz every 5 seconds. He's throwing so many different shots from so many different angles. You can barely ever see it coming. And unless you're one of the GOATs like Volk, I just don't think you're going to be able to stand with him. Even Volk and Max Holloway were shooting for the legs against this guy. So I could see a finish very similar to Ian Gary versus D-Rod. I think that Yair Rodriguez is going to land a nasty high kick after he kind of eases Brian Ortega into thinking that it's just low kicks and body kicks coming his way. I think he's going to throw a lot of leg kicks in this fight to slow down Ortega, eventually sneaking one upstairs. And I think he's going to get a big head kick to ground and pound KO. Give me that in round 3. That's going to be my prediction for Yair Rodriguez versus Brian Ortega. Yair sitting at a -165 price tag as well. I think that's pretty good odds on someone I'm pretty damn sure is going to win this fight, because you just really cannot look at the layoff that Brian Ortega has had and not think that he's going to have ring rust, high elevation in Mexico City. I think Yair Rodriguez has a chip on his shoulder. Now that Volk's no longer the champ, I think he wants to get back to that belt. He matches up well against Ilya, and that would also just be an awesome fight. So give me Yair Rodriguez by round 3, head kick to ground and pound, KO. And just to continue on with that point, I think if Yair gets a big win here, he is definitely in line for a title shot if it's not Movsar Evloev. But if he does it in emphatic fashion, I think people are going to want to rally behind the Yair-Ilya matchup more than the Movsar Evloev one. And where does Brian Ortega go from here? I mean, his last win was in October of 2020. So it's been years since this guy's even won in the cage. And he's still at number 4 in the featherweight division, which I have no idea how that's even possible. I think Khabib has had a more recent victory than Brian Ortega, and he's been retired for years now. So I think Ortega, maybe he can fight Sterling if he loses this fight. But I kind of want Volk to fight Sterling so that he doesn't take any more damage. But we already know that Volk's going to want to get that rematch. So I could see Ortega maybe fighting Aljamain Sterling after this fight. I think that would be an entertaining matchup. Or, you know, maybe he could fight Calvin Kattar. I think Calvin Kattar or fucking Raheem Sterling. Aljamain Sterling is definitely a good option for Ortega to go to once he loses this fight. But with that being said, I think that this is going to be an exciting matchup, but I'm pretty damn confident that Yair is going to win. I like him by TKO. I could see a decision as well, but official call, head kick to ground and pound, round 3. We move on to the main event of the evening, the Battle of the Brandons. We got Moreno versus Royval. Of course, this was supposed to be Amir Albazi. He had to pull out due to a neck injury. Up steps Brandon Royval, coming off of the loss to Alexander Pantoja at UFC 296. So, quick turnaround for him here. Excited to see Moreno back in the cage as well. I think it's going to be an excellent atmosphere for him. Walking out in Mexico City, you already know the crowd's going to go crazy for him, and I think that he's going to win this fight as well. I like Moreno by a decision. I could see this fight going very similarly to the Pantoja versus Royval matchup. I think the striking exchanges are going to be a little more entertaining, to be honest, just because Royval is a little bit more wild. Pantoja kind of just is a marauder. He'll throw a big old body kick, a few big old overhands, relies on that steel chin. Royval is a little bit more wiry, quick, twitch, and Moreno, you already know that he's always down for a scrap. Good boxing, good leg kicks, finished Kai Kara France with a beautiful body kick as well. So he can mix it up on the feet. So I think this is going to be an excellent matchup to watch just from a pure entertainment spectacle. But I think that Brandon Moreno will eventually get it done utilizing some grappling. Royval just kind of has like a scrawny build, and he seems to be easy to take down from guys like Pantoja. And I think that Moreno is not going to have any trouble with it either. I think that eventually he's going to start stealing the rounds by getting a takedown at the end, maybe some ground and pound, threatening a submission. And Royval, unless he catches you with something quick and sneaky, I think that the ground control is just always going to be his weakness. So since the ground control is always kind of his weakness, I could see this being close on the feet. But like I said, I think Moreno is just going to edge it out, you know, getting the better of the wrestling scrambles, not getting as tired. And I think he'll eventually get that decision win, probably controlling Royval in the last 2 or 3 rounds, really solidifying it. But that is my main event prediction for UFC Fight Night Moreno versus Royval 2 taking place in Mexico City. Let me know what you guys thought about my predictions. Let me know who you guys got in the comments. And I'm looking forward to this card. I hope you are too. I hope you guys enjoy it. And like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching the video, and have a wonderful rest of your day.